This is Alexa with the Clinicians Atelier, and I'm really excited to have Dr. Tanner Moore with us today.
Hey, I'm Dr. Tanner Moore. I am the medical director for Clearwater Health Direct Primary Care. I founded this practice as I was getting out of the Army because I realized that the current medical industrial complex was just kind of chewing up doctors too fast, and I knew that wasn't where I was meant to thrive. I wanted to find a place that patients could come to find actual healing rather than the inconvenience and financial harm of the current system. And fortunately, DPC kind of just was becoming a major thing as I was getting out of the military, and we were able to capitalize on that and just kind of put our surfboard right on the proper part of the wave, and we're riding it in as this becomes mainstream.
So tell me a little bit. Just so listeners don't know, but Dr. Tanner is actually one of my clients, so I'm really excited that he agreed to do this interview with me because I feel like he's had such an entrepreneurial mindset since day one. And I think a lot of people could learn from his mindset and the things that he has done to grow his practice from the start. So do you kind of mind sharing let's start from like kind of the beginning, when you knew you wanted to start your DPC, can you kind of explain what your thought process was on how you were going to establish yourself differently in your community and in your practice?
Yeah, starting with you was one of the first things that we did because we were really following an outline that's been laid down very well in the literature by some other doctors. Dr. Paul Thomas with Plum Health, Dr. Farrago. He wrote a couple books about how to start your own DPC practice, and we really followed the outline that they were providing for us. And so we knew exactly what we wanted to do, and we knew that the best way to grow DPC was through employers, and we knew that we wanted to have a large DPC. We were interested in the business of medicine. And of course, there's always the temptation as a DPC doctor and as a physician that finds a way to be self-employed to kind of go hang your shingle and be a great, country doc and do house calls and all those things that I really enjoy about having my own panel. But we knew that other doctors wanted to get in on this as well. And we were uniquely positioned to help them for a couple reasons. I had a lot of leadership experience in the military. And so in the 82nd Airborne, I was a brigade surgeon, which meant that I learned how to lead physicians and take care of other physicians' panels and take care of patients through other doctors. And when you learn a skill in the military, you kind of need to be able to transpose that onto the private sector when you become a civilian. That set us up for me to have that skill set. But then also because the military, again, had paid for my school, I was in an entirely different debt position. So financially, we were set up to open a practice when I was getting out. And we knew that if we bring on these doctors and we try to grow our panels through retail, as in and bringing on individuals and families, it would be very slow. And it would be a hard, long marketing process. Whereas the 40% of people in the United States are getting their health care or their health benefits through their employer. And if we could tap into that and say, like, look, employers, we have a way to save you money, take better care of your people, and improve your recruiting and retention because you're offering these great benefits, expediting the growth of those panels for these physicians as we bring them on. And the faster we can grow the panels, the faster we can help get physicians out of the system. And right now, it's two totally different asks for doctors coming out of the system, right? It's like, do you want to be a DPC doctor where you can take better care of your patients, maybe even make more money and spend more time with your family? And it's like, of course, everybody would want to do that. But when you look at the other side, and it's like, do you want to be an entrepreneur and take out a second mortgage and learn to hire and fire people and stay awake all night wondering how you're going to make it all work? And like the same guy that has to do the vasectomies is also responsible for taking out the trash. It's like, of course not. That sounds terrible. And I can attest, it is terrible sometimes. But to remove all of that resistance to entering and all those hurdles. And so we said, hey, let's start a practice where we provide the location, the staff, the panel, the electronic medical record, and the salary for physicians so they could just walk out of the medical industrial complex and be in the direct primary care system and if we target employers, we'll be able to actually deliver on that promise. And so that's really what we've done. I can talk a lot about what's not worked and a little bit about what has worked if you're interested in that as well.
I'm kind of curious. So I know you've explained, your leadership and how that pulled into your entrepreneur spirit and wanting to create something where you're also helping other physicians who may not want to have to wear that many hats, right? And so my question is, I know you said reaching out to employers would be a faster way to grow. Do you still work with any individuals, or is your main mindset, I want to work with employers only?
Our mission is to deliver direct primary care to as many people as possible because as a physician, my family has direct access to a doctor all the time. And I feel like everyone should have that as well. We use employers because that's the fastest way to grow the practice, but we're happy to take on individuals and families and anyone else that wants to join any way they want to do it. So that's just not where we target, but we still gain a lot of growth from that area.
Can you kind of share with the listeners how you've been able to target employers, how you've been able to have conversations and actually be able to convert them into joining the practice?
There's a few different ways that we've found successful and 100 ways that we've found unsuccessful. And I think there are some principles to keep in mind and a roadmap to keep in mind as you're going with it. So there are some easy buttons. There are many companies out there. I won't name all of them because they're proprietary, but there are companies who will promise you patients, and that's easy enough to put up a booth at the Direct Primary Care Summit and every doctor in the room is hungry for patients, right? And everybody knows, or at least all healthcare innovators know, that direct primary care is the foundation of healthcare innovations. All right. So like without direct primary care, kind of none of it can be built because there's not a strong enough foundation. So people that aren't doctors get into it and they say, well, I can't really be the doctor that works in direct primary care to help this grow, but I could maybe deliver patients. So there are 100 people coming at you when you open day one saying like, hey, would you like for us to help you gain patients? Some of them want you to pay them money in exchange for that. Some of them just want a piece of the pie when you do have the patients. And some of them are just kind of interested to see if this thing's worth growing. Fortunately, we fell in with some people who were just like intrigued when we told them about DPC. And I had been doing everything. Like, listen, I have a wrap on my car. I put on my white coat and stethoscope and carried my black bag. And I went door to door to every business on Main Street and side streets in our county. And we're in Wake County, so it's big. And I did that for 2 months. I got one patient from doing that. And I was like, all right, this is not sustainable. But everyone's like, just get out there, go to BNI, go to the Chamber of Commerce, join the Rotary. I did every single one of those things. And like, yes, probably after years of investment, you'll get some people to join your practice. So you'll just kind of become like a known commodity and have some roll up that way. That was not fast enough for us. What we needed was somebody to deliver patients rapidly. And so the things that have worked for us is using one of those systems. Like we're a Hint Connect anchor clinic. So Hint Connect, Beth Holmes will call. Like one night I was sitting on my couch and she was like, hey, can you see 200 to 400 patients? Can you take care of 200 to 400 patients that are an hour and a half from your house? Like gulp, yes, is the only answer. So I was like, all right, where is this? How far away is it? I'm like running the maps to see what's my drive going to be like and everything. But 2 days later, I was at open enrollment pitching our clinic. And then we set up 2 on-site clinics in factories for this large employer. And that really launched us forward because it got me familiar with what employers want and need and the sales process. And the sales process, kind of that roadmap and those principles that I was talking about, you have to keep in mind when you're selling to an employer, you're really making 3 sales. First, you need to sell yourself to their broker, whoever's going to actually put you on the table in the cafeteria as one of the options. All right. So you're talking to them about the money they're going to make. Long story short. All right. And then you have to sell yourself to the employer that's accepting this as part of the plan because they can be like, I'm not really interested. Give me, a Google plan. So you have to talk to them about the money they're going to save. So you're talking to one person, here's how much money I'm going to make you. Here's how much money I'm going to save you is the next person. And then you have to go make a third sale where you go to open enrollment and you have to sell yourself as a competent and compassionate physician and a capable practice that can take care of them and is going to be there and actually deliver. There's this fourth part that comes on when everybody else evaporates, right? Like the broker's gone, the CEO's back in his office, and now you actually have to deliver. So now you're actually in clinic, seeing the people, trying to catch up because a lot of them have been neglected, and figure out what's going on. And so then once you've started delivering, that's really your fourth sale, because then those people go out, they tell everybody else, and then they're your sales force if you do a good job. So there's really four parts to keep in mind, but there's three that are just pure sales. Read Never Split the Difference, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and all these other books to help with that. But that fourth one is just everything that you already were meant to do as a physician. Just do it well, and the rest take care of itself. All right. And then we had those people who were just barely interested in our practice or kind of intrigued. They just cold called for us. We had two young guys who were like super capable at cold calling. Just were like, let's see if this can sell. And they just started making cold calls. Didn't want anything in return. They were just trying it out. We got tons of leads from them. And then that put us in touch with other leads through other businesses and stuff. So that helped. I mean, I don't have any recommendation for where to find that. That was just like, that dropped out of the sky as a blessing. And then the third one, the thing that's been the biggest for me has definitely been LinkedIn. When I was talking with those guys, they were like, I told them like, hey, I'm not interested in social media. I literally hate Instagram and like what Meta is doing to our society. And they were like, well, like maybe try a different one, go to LinkedIn. Cause they were like, you would like blow up on LinkedIn. And I was like, I don't even have a LinkedIn. I'm not interested in LinkedIn. They were like, make a video. We think that if you made videos that looked like this, they would do well. And I just made one. It took me literally 20 minutes to write the script, 20 minutes to record, and 20 minutes to edit on CapCut. And I posted it, and it had like 4,500 views in the first 2 days. And I was like, dang, this is where it's at. And I had been like calling brokers. They wouldn't return my calls. I had been like knocking on their doors. All of a sudden one day I had 77 connection requests, and over 50 of them were benefits brokers. So I was like, all right, LinkedIn's where it's at. So if I could give one tip to people, it's like tune up your LinkedIn. Doctors don't realize that like we're in front of patients all the day. So we're like on all day long to that exam table all day. We're on stage. But other people are essentially like an audience, and like an audience can sit there and read the program or do whatever else they want to do. Other people in business are like on their computer and answering emails and stuff. And so LinkedIn is kind of like their getaway. Facebook and Instagram are blocked on their computer, but LinkedIn's not. And so you can really access them through LinkedIn.
No, that's really great. So there's a few things I want to kind of reiterate that you shared. One specifically being going back to the audience, right? Your audience is employers. Employers are going to be on LinkedIn, going to be more like your corporate. And then Instagram and Facebook are going to be more your individuals. And so that's why knowing your target, and, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point, knowing your niche, knowing your target, where to find them is so important, because oftentimes people are just like looking everywhere, trying everything in the book, but they don't understand why their practice isn't growing because they don't have a clear vision on who they're trying to attract. And so I like the fact that you shared, I've never had anyone share it like that, but like the 3 sales, essentially the fourth of just keeping that patient relationship going to get eventual referrals, because like you said, they're your walking testimony. And I know myself, I'm a DPC patient, and I go tell small businesses all the time that I'm not even a doctor. And I'm just like, have you heard of DPC?
Well, I think you're exactly right. And like people who are looking for more of retail patients, and a lot of DPCs that's perfect for, because they kind of want to have like a cottage industry type clinic where they're taking care of like their flock, and that's ideal for them to be able to just market to families and whatnot. And so like, and it works too. I mean, 1 month in August, we decided we were going to try to kickstart Facebook and Instagram a little bit. We're like, let's see exactly what these things can even do. And I just videotaped myself getting out of the cold call or the house calls mobile and walking into the clinic and just saying like, hey, I'm a new doctor in town. We do house calls. We're passionate about healing. It got over 100,000 views and over 70 shares. And I think that month we got like 10 to 20 patients that, not just leads, like patients that signed up for the clinic that month from that. And so it was like there for a month or two, it was like every day or so we had somebody at least coming for a meet and greet, and then most of them sign up. Like that's another thing to do, is like learn to close. and learn that you're selling yourself. That's the other thing people have to appreciate. Like, then selling yourself means you're selling the person on themselves, because they want to hear about themselves. They want to think about themselves. There's this story. I forget who the girl was, but she was the daughter of some British politician, and she was meeting all of the politicians that were running for government in England, whatever. And she met Neville Chamberlain. And she said when she left, she was convinced that he was the smartest person that she'd ever met. But then the next day, she met Winston Churchill. And when she left meeting Winston Churchill, she was convinced that she was the smartest person in the world. And so she voted for Winston Churchill. And that's something to keep in mind, is like, when you meet someone, you're there to like glorify them. And as long as you're good at that, you'll be good at sales. But if you're just trying to tell them all about why DPC is the greatest thing ever, then they're gonna kind of gloss over and not really be interested.
I want to kind of touch on that too, because, I've also worked in sales for 20 years. And one thing I've always learned is listening with intent and listening past what the words people are saying and trying to find how you can provide a solution to their pain points. Oftentimes, like you said, people, and this is something I've talked about in a couple of podcasts now, people often want to give like a resume of like, this is what I've accomplished. This is what I do. This is why I'm qualified. But you're never really saying how you're going to help that person. So why would I be interested if I don't feel like you've heard me? I don't feel like you're concerned about me. I don't feel like you are explaining to me how you're going to, why do I need you anyways? Like, what solution are you bringing to my life?
Exactly. Yeah, you might be offering like the world's best solution, but they don't even have the problem. So you might be wasting your time anyway. And so the asking questions, the Socratic method is always the best way to learn. And so like, just come in and ask them about it. If they're not even in the position to make the decision, then don't waste your breath, man. There are 7 billion people out there to sell to. Don't try to sell to someone who's not even in the market. There are some people that are hungry for your product.
I do want to touch on the cold calling, because I think that was a piece you had shared with me that I found very interesting. Cold calling is something we hear about in real estate all the time, cold calling people all the time. I've never really heard of a practice that I've worked with. I haven't heard of cold calling employers. And I know specifically you met these two guys that were able to do it for you and found all the leads in order to call them. But I think that's actually also really good, is sometimes allowing people to come alongside of you and help you. I think sometimes we try to do everything, or we feel like, oh my God, I can't hire this person, or there's kind of like this speculation that they want something out of it. But I think in the end of the day is sometimes you need to be able to trust people. I remember when I was younger, I tried to do everything by myself. I didn't want to hire anybody because in my mind, no one could do it like me. But then I realized one day someone told me, you have to trust the people you bring alongside of you to be able to execute what you need. And when they told me that, I realized, okay, I need to give this person an opportunity. And that's when my business also grew, because I was able to focus what I was good at, which was doing sales, meeting people, speaking to people. And I still designed the websites myself because it's something I love. But there were other things that I was like, okay, maybe they can help me here or there so that I can maximize my time. And I think you realizing, okay, I'm going to give these people an opportunity, and it ended up connecting you with other employers in your niche that maybe you couldn't have done, trying to see patients, trying to go be the face of the company. And then on top of that, trying to sit there all day calling, because calling is, you really have to follow up. And that's one thing people, unfortunately, when you first open any business, it doesn't even matter what kind of business it is. People get frustrated if they don't convert in 1 to 2 times that they meet someone. And a lot of times the close is in the follow-up, constantly following, to staying in touch, checking in. And it doesn't have to be like, hey, do you want to buy? It's just like, hey, how are you? Just saying that hello and just staying front of mind with the people that you're trying to connect with.
All of that is so true. And I mean, like, the first sale we ever got, the first legitimate sale, I followed up with them 7 times. Like, I knocked on their door. I went into their shop. I bought something in their shop. I did all this, and then like asked them about, what I would do when I would go just do the door knocking. I would just make small talk. I wouldn't pitch or anything like that. I would just go into the shop and talk to the people. Because when you walk in on a white coat and a black bag, they're like, what are you doing here? And you tell them house calls. I would always just say, like, I'm just out running house calls. I always wanted to stop in the shop and see what it's like. And so that would start up a conversation. And I would just glean as much information as possible about their life. And they would immediately, go towards their own health stuff because I'm a doctor and it's rare that people talk to a doctor. And so I would write that down. I would walk out and I had a note and I would just like take down as much notes as I could. And then the next time I went in, I would read that note immediately before walking in and then ask them about the issue that they had talked about. And like, yeah, if I had had more time and actually followed up, and if I was still emailing those people, I have no doubt that I could close almost all of them now that I know how to do it. But early on, it was super discouraging to be like, I just sat here and listened to your like sob story for 30 minutes for free. And then I stopped back in. I like remembered your kid's name and that your dog has some GI problem and all these other issues. And you're still like, I'd rather just get screwed by the healthcare system than have you be my doctor. So I was like super discouraged with that. But talking about the relief of having help, I mean, when our nurse started, it was the most tangible. It was like a boulder was lifted off my chest. Just have someone else answering the phone and someone else to like say hi when a patient walks in the door. All right. And then we recently partnered with this awesome company to go from being a lone ranger trying to start your own business to even just having other entrepreneurs to kind of like commiserate with was a massive relief. And it's like, all right, I'm no longer just, one man charging the wall. I now have like a unit around me that I'm able to approach this with. And that was a massive relief.
I was just thinking when you said something about how you would listen to people's sob stories. It was so funny. My dad, when I was younger, he essentially was the one that taught me how to do sales. And he said to me one day, you have to like, and he said it's in Spanish, so I'm trying my best to translate it. But he was like, you have to like make people fall in love with you. Like you have to romance them, I guess is the better translation. You have to romance them. You have to listen to the people. You have to remember the kids' names and you have to really care and show a genuine interest because then people feel comfortable with you. And so when I started my businesses and got into sales, I always remembered that. So I would always ask a lot of questions. Like you said, you would write notes. And like every time I ever have a discovery call, like I'll sometimes write 2-3 pages of notes of everything they're sharing me about their vision, what their desire is, what they're looking for, what their audience is. Because in my mind, the more information I have about a person, the better I can serve them because the more I understand their vision and what they need. Pretty sure it's the same when you have patients come in and they're sharing their concerns and they're sharing the things that they're struggling with. The more you understand that patient, the better you can serve them because you have a better picture of what it is that they need.
It's so true. You really attract business. I forget what the doctor or the author's last name is, something Green, that wrote the 48 Laws of Power. He wrote another book that's like the laws of seduction. And it's not seduction like intimately, it's about seduction as in like how to get a nation to have a revolution and things like that. And he says like, you seduce the populace into your own ideas. And that's what like your dad was saying. You really they have to find you attractive, like your ideas attractive and then make them believe in them and all these things. And it's so true. Like that's how you get people. First, you have to like make them believe that you are the guy who or girl who could deliver the solution. And then next you have to sell them on the solution. So yeah, there's a lot. You have to kind of build rapport before you do any of that.
Talking about books, my dad probably only got an associate's, but he was a 7-figure earner, great in sales and real estate. He hated real estate, to be honest, but he was so good at what he did. And I remember when he passed away, I was 27 and I found his goal list from like 90 something. I think I was 5 when he wrote it. And one thing he wrote on there was the way he was going to be successful. He said the library, because, dating back in the day, like we didn't have Audible. He's like, the library would be his school. And so he would read so many books. I feel like everyone I speak to always have like books that have like really helped them along their journey and the importance of like educating yourself, especially when you're starting a business. I think sometimes, especially if you've only done a skill set, but you never learned the business aspect or the sales aspect, I think it's important to educate yourself so you can be successful. Because I feel like the people that do sadly fail in business in general, and it's not just in DPC, it's just any business, I think it's not having the skill set because all of the things that we're discussing, you can learn. And that brings me back to when you said it took you 7 times to close your first legitimate sale. Actually, I always give this sales statistics that it takes 7 to 8 touches, is like encounters, before someone makes a decision. So it was really funny that you said 7 because that's literally the stats.
Yeah. Yeah. P.T. Barnum said, here's a good book recommendation for you, The Art of Money Getting. And so P.T. Barnum, the circus guy, he said, just know you have to talk with everyone 7 times to get them into your circus tent. And so he would do crazy stuff, like have people ride an elephant down Main Street and like feign a bar fight and all these things to like get people's attention. But yeah, it's true. And then when it comes to books, there's a lot of interesting information about that. I think one of the first Stoics went to the Oracle of Delphi and asked, how do I become a philosopher? And they said, you have to learn to have conversations with the dead. And he's like, that doesn't make any sense. And moved on with his life. And then he was shipwrecked. And when he was shipwrecked, he ended up in Greece and went into a bookstore, and there was someone there who was reading Socrates. And he picked up a book about Socrates and had never read it before. And he realized, like, oh, I'm supposed to be learning from these people who solved all these problems before. And that's what a library really is. It's like all these dead people telling you all the information that they learned during their life. And, it's like health is wasted on the young and wisdom is wasted on the old, right? So it's like all those people, they write it all down and then die, but it's all in those books. It is all in the library. And a library card is free, but only 3% of people in America have a library card. And I know, like, discovering something like the Overdrive app where I could listen to library books. Back when I was in medical school, I discovered that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to pay. I didn't have enough money to buy Audible books because they're like $12 a pop. But I could just crush books and learned all kinds of stuff. And I mean, like, that was the secret to success with DPC as well. Like, I read every single word I could find written about DPC. I was on a deployment. I was reading, like, I had time to read because, the Army's like, hurry up and wait, right? So, like, I had 6 hours to get ready to leave the nation and then 6 months to do nothing once I arrived at the place where we were going. I read as much as possible. And that's the other thing I would recommend. Like, you don't have to go ask people, ask experts one thing or another. Don't even do that until you've read all the books. That's what I would say. And listen to them. They're on Audible, or get AI to read them to you.
Yeah, that's so good. I love audio, mainly because I'm such a slow reader because I have dyslexia. And so when I listen to the books, I feel like someone's just talking to me. So I really love just listening to books. And now I feel judged because I probably have 100 titles that I have not all fully read, but I've been paying for Audible on the subscription for so long that every time someone recommends a book, I'll put them in my wish list. And every time I get a new credit every month, I'll like download a new book recommendation. But I definitely have ADHD because I'll listen to 4 different books at the same time. And somehow I'll remember what book it was.
You have to do that because you're in a different mood all the time. It's funny to think back. I mean, I also don't walk around with a book like I used to, but it's funny that like The Hobbit is just what I'm doing this month used to be like kind of, but it's like, you're not always in the mood for The Hobbit, not even like throughout the same day. It's good to be able to bounce from book to book to book. Like, I'll listen to a book about like military history, family success, and then business all in the same drive. So it's like, you have to be able to bounce around. There's no shame in that.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, so what were some things that you felt that you did that just like that you tried that you just did not feel like it worked?
Like, big things that didn't work was just trying to sell DPC instead of become friends with the people who I'm talking to. So when you're meeting people and stuff like that, the biggest thing to learn is like when you call somebody, if you are going to cold call them, you're not trying to sell DPC. You're trying to get a follow-up meeting. Just become a quick friend and then be like, hey, let's get together sometime. We can kind of see if we can find some way to work together and make each other money. And they'll be interested in that. When I was just like, DPC is the best idea ever. And as soon as people hear this, they're going to all come running. Like, that was wrong. I'll tell you that much. And then I realized like all I need to do is make this a long game. It's going to be way more about persistence and way less about speed.
I just was talking to someone the other day, and I think it was just like in a discovery call. I don't even think it was the podcast. And we were talking, and I was like, people, again, going back to the 7 to 8 touches, people give up, they get frustrated, and then you're not in this business to close in a year. Like, you're in this business to establish connections and nurture those connections until they're ready one day. You know how many people have followed me 1 to 3 years and they've hired me 3 years after following me? it was, if I would have quit after a year because I was frustrated because I couldn't close them that year and I just gave up on them and never nurtured those leads. You want to always build, I hate sounding so salesy, but it's like you want to build your pipeline. So if you're nurturing those leads, whether it's like you send a monthly email or you're follow them on Instagram and they can watch what you're doing and you're just kind of nurturing those leads, or on LinkedIn and you're just like checking in, or they see that you're constantly posting and they see that consistency. One day something's going to happen. And in that moment, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I need to go to Dr. Tanner because this happened. And I just, I've been watching him for a while now already. And so it definitely is a long game. And I also think one thing you said is one, becoming your friend. I literally say I become friends with like all my clients because we just build a relationship and we get to know each other, not just professionally, but just also personally when we're going through these projects. You have to educate the people you're speaking to. And I think that, like you said, DPC is so great, but I think sometimes people think it's too good to be true. And so because of that skepticism, they're not ready to quote unquote buy in because they're like, I don't know, that sounds kind of too good to be true. Like I will share DPC. I'm not even a doctor. I'll tell people I am a patient and they still think I'm lying to them.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely DPC's biggest problem is it's too good to be true when you're selling it. And people are like, I wasn't born yesterday. I'm not going to fall for that. And then even after you help them understand that, like, no, this is a thing, I do it. They're like, I'm going to stick with the devil I know until enough other people have proof of concept.
Tell me, what would be some advice you'd give someone who's starting or struggling to get their practice going? What would you say to that person?
I'm there with you. So I would say, and I don't know that I'm ever going to stop because we're growing and we're a growth model. So I'm going to live in that forever. And you have to decide if it's something that you like or something you hate. And I think you should decide that before you ever dive in. Because right now, there's this really strong culture and inertia towards entrepreneurialism in direct primary care. And I'm not entirely sure that that's for the best because it seems like right now the kind of the message that's conveyed to doctors who are interested is like, hey, if you want to be a DPC doc, here's everything to learn about opening your DPC practice. And this isn't just for physicians. This goes for electricians and general contractors and grocery store owners and everything. But like when you go into business for yourself, it might be because you like doing a thing, but you really run the risk of coming to not like the thing because it will be all you do from now on. If you're employed, you can kind of like 9 to 5 it. And you think about your patients. Like that's what I want my doctors to do. I want my doctors to like not have anything else on the plate and just think about being great for their patients. But I'm sitting here like this morning, I was making a purchase request template for Google Sheets for other employees to enter stuff because people are like, we need paper and like we need, scalpels. And I'm like, we have to have a system for this. And like being the person that has to do everything is crazy overwhelming. And so decide first if that's what you want to do, but don't decide I want to be a DPC doctor and then accidentally become an entrepreneur. Decide I want to be an entrepreneur and the business I'm going to open is a DPC practice. That's the biggest recommendation I would give.
I love that. I honestly think you said it so perfectly because I think it really takes a certain personality to do what we all do, run a business. And again, like you said, it doesn't matter necessarily the model because, and I've shared this, when I started my business at 21, I didn't have money. I had to learn everything. Like I sometimes think of all the stuff that I know and clients ask me and I help that aren't even related to design or sales sometimes because I've had to learn so much and it definitely can burn you out. And that's why I'm saying I started hiring VAs maybe 6-7 years ago to help me do the little admin tasks, little things that would just like take up so much of my time, like you creating a spreadsheet when you could be doing something that is more productive of your time. But unfortunately, when you are starting a business, sometimes you do have to be mindful of the investments you're making. And that's in people, in the people you hire, and the time that you're spending. But sometimes things have to get done. And I think when you get to a certain point and level where you could maybe get a VA for certain stuff and hire people to help you, then you can create more relationships and nurture the relationships you have to continue growing them, and your business continues to grow. And I think that's so great that you said that you have to decide to be an entrepreneur first and then decide this is where I want to focus on. And I think that's so true. I think sometimes when people go to DPC Summit, they're super fired up. They're so excited. And they're like, yes, I want to do this. But they don't think about the hat they have to wear as an entrepreneur. And I think that's where sometimes people fail and get frustrated when they start their practice.
For sure. Another big one that I think kind of needs to be course corrected in direct primary care is there's this bend on like, you need to open with zero debt. Like, don't use leverage. And I think that comes from doctors having no business acumen and no business education. But like when you go into Publix didn't buy those groceries and vegetables cash. They have a loan or a line of credit. They buy them low and sell high, and they make money on the arbitrage. Publix is just a shelter for stuff that they've bought on debt to sell for a profit and pay off the debt and keep the profit. All right. So like, you have to realize that every single other business is working that way. And for you to just try to bootstrap it, you're going to run yourself into the ground, and you're going to be way more stressed than you need to be, because as a physician, we have access to really good financial instruments, and just giving yourself the cushion of like a line of credit, just like have a line of credit. We have a line of credit. We use essentially zero of it. But if an emergency happened, like I have a parachute that I can pull. And then that line of credit transitions into a 10-year term afterwards. And like, if the entire thing, burnt down tomorrow and I had to start all over, I could pay off that line of credit by moonlighting in the ER or something like that. But people talk about taking on any debt as though like you're going to sink the ship and you'll never pay it back. No, just like learn a little bit about how to use banks and how to use capital, and you will save yourself a ton of stress that you would otherwise be, stressing about money.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that. I will say I built my business debt-free because, again, I was so young. And I think there's also this fear of just like owing people. And so I have learned, over the years, especially when you get into real estate, like leveraging debt in order to make a profit. And I think it's just really getting yourself educated, getting the right accountant or someone to guide you financially, or a financial advisor, just so that way like, what can I realistically do? Like you said, if the place burned down to the ground and you could still handle that payment over, a 10-year term. So I think one thing I will say is when you're 100% debt-free, it takes so much longer to grow because you have to pay everything cash. And sometimes if you don't have the cash available, it does kind of slow down. And I have noticed that over the years, because maybe I didn't have the money to hire someone to do something. And so I had to do it, and I had to work 80 hours instead of having maximized my time and having had the money to pay someone. And so I think sometimes having that mindset of educating yourself financially and thinking realistically, what can I take on and how can this help me grow quicker, and getting projections is something good to also learn. I think there's always that two sides of that coin. Do I go debt free? Do I take a longer growth, or do I want to go quicker? And this is a risk I'll have to take to grow quicker. It's just like when you invest in riskier stocks, although I'm not an expert on that, but you always know that if you're putting more money into a higher risk stock, you could make more money or you could lose a lot of money. And so I think just being a little more knowledgeable to kind of help reduce some of that risk, I think is really ultimately key.
And so maybe that's another thing that somebody needs to do when they're first starting. They need to go learn about money. They're going to spend their whole time working to build this thing to get money, but then they never spend any time learning about how money works. Like, go learn about money and then go figure out how you want to get it. Because once you get it, there's two money problems. There's not enough and there's too much. And they're equally urgent. So yeah, figuring out how to work those is an important thing that you can do, like, while the pressure's not on.
No, that's good. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know it's time. I don't want to take any more. If there's any last few words you want to give, you're more than welcome to. But thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you. I'm really excited to share this episode.
Yeah, thank you, Alexa. Like I said, you were one of the first vendors we worked with when we started into this venture, and it was such a great experience. And I really appreciate you giving us this platform now.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining today's episode. If you haven't already gotten a free copy of my latest ebook, Brand Personality, make sure to visit our link at theclinicianatelier.com. And there is a section that you can click on to get a free download of the ebook. In the ebook, you'll learn about how to really set your brand's personality, how to do your copy, how to speak to your audience, how do colors speak to your potential audience, as well as where to find your ideal patient, whether it's digital or in person. So make sure to get your free copy today if you haven't. And again, thank you so much for joining. If you want to share your story of how you have grown your practice, you can also apply through our website.